I used a boat to cross the river. When the river was crossed, I need not carry the boat on my head because the walk, the journey was on bare land where there was no direction, no destination to reach, simply be. So the rivers meeting at three rivers meeting at one point and merging and then merging into shoreless ocean. That's the ultimate I find. Now, let me take you back to those 50s that I was here. This is a little philosophical part, but now we'll come to 50s. I was here in the 50s when I studied and moving around here. I would go to Jahangir Art Gallery, and that's where the lost fakir is found into mosque, you know. I would meet all these artists. Uh, uh, Francis Newton, Sousa, Hebber, Gade, Mohan, Samant, and all those things. And then I was student and finished my studies and all that. But these people were already creative painters, studying, working here, and exhibiting their solo shows in the galleries and all that. And I came to know them and became friends. They came to my studio in New York and all that. We maintained kind of good relationship, friendship, because we were thinking on the same level. And meeting them, most of this, when Hussein came into the picture and all that. By the way, Hussein comes from Pandharpur and I come from Sholapur. So I used to call Makbul Bhai. He used to banner painter. He was known there, a banner painter, and then came to New York and of course in small town, what can you do to make a living, you know? So, but he had that inborn talent when he came here and flourished. And so all these and they're great painters and their associations and working with them, living with them, meeting in their studio, that helped me a lot to shape up my life. Now, if you have any question or anything about, this is what about I feel about what my whole approach was towards the ultimate in all these things. Where do we go? Is there only name, fame, and money and glory in painting or music or singing and is there anything beyond than that? And that was my main concern. And today I feel I found that in three mediums, and then I was for last 15, 20 years, and so steady within me, painting, exhibiting. Now I'm not exhibiting. I did exhibit in Manhattan, in New York City for about 10, 12 years. Every year shows and group shows and paintings went up around and all that thing. But now I'm steady within myself, painting. Art dealers buy from me and they sell them. But I do not exhibit. I do not go meet painters or other artists. I do not go see their show because I found the ultimate in these three fields. I do not go to temple or church or mosque or anywhere. I just don't feel the need of that because what I was searching I found it within myself. Thank you.
I'm sure that this has been very illuminating, and we could go on and on, because this is such an interesting subject in itself. I would like to focus on some of the areas, and then I'll throw it open to the audience, because I'm sure you have a lot of questions to ask. I can see that you are quite energized by the presentation. I'd like to focus on some key areas of his presentation. Mr. Patole, if I may. I think the main focus of interest for the audience, in the light of the recent discovery, and this has been a continuum from the time of Raza, and before that Hussain, and later on Tayyab Mehta, his celebration, his painting, etc., which fetched large, staggering amounts, and now with Gaitonde, the circle is kind of complete. So I think the audience, and I in particular, for the archival purposes also, we would value your comments on the progressive era movement in Bombay, progressive movement in Bombay in the 50s, that you had a first-hand look at, because these are legends in their own right. Souza and Hussain and Ara and Gaitonde and a lot of those people of that era, and Shabash Chawla also, and so many great artists came in that period. Akbar Padamsi is still with us, and Sabawala and so forth. Your impressions of that period and how it affected your style, because you started with Achrekar, did you not? And he was a master at portraiture, and he went to Russia, he went to America, and he did this famous sketchbooks. Then he worked with RK Studios. So he worked in the realistic medium. JJ had a tradition up until that period, up until 50s, of a realistic tradition.
Yes.
But the progressive movement changed the whole paradigm in Indian art. And there were a lot of innovations that came about through the work of Hussain and Ara and Souza in particular, and then later Gaito. They took it a step further. How did that influence you and your memories of that, sir? When you came to Bombay?
Yes. That was a period, actually, century was coming to an end and merging into another. It is said, if you try to tune the instruments at the sunset, the instrument will not be in perfectly in tune. They cannot remain or cannot be tuned. A singer or instrument player will realize that there is something is not right. A singer will not have his sa in perfect pitch. There will be something missing, because the day is merging into night. And same thing, but the music must continue. So most of the time, these music programs are arranged at about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and they go till midnight. Same thing with the century ending and merging into another. 50s, even starting from 30s and 50s. Realistic style, which we adopted from the West, mastered it, like Art-critic, Bendre, and all those painters, mastered. But they themselves came to a point of realization that they are coming to dead end, and there is what is next, and what is next was already happening in other countries. For instance, earlier than that, Van Gogh felt the movement of the earth, flowers blooming, sunlight getting brighter and all that, and wind is blowing. And he showed that in his stroke, Starry Night. The stars are twinkling, air is blooming, earth is moving, and all that thing they became conscious of that. And man is breathing, is not just a statue sitting. Man is breathing, wind is blowing, and everything they felt that from within. Earlier painters painted sunlight, sunrise, for whole 6 months. Beautiful picture sunrise. You will see sun and trees and sky and clouds and all that, so beautiful. And by then, so many sunrises, sunsets and sunrises must have happened. But then color photography was not there. So they made beautiful, large painting of sunrise or sunset, and people enjoy. But the painters also realized that something is wrong. I'm painting sunrise, whereas there's so many times sun is rising and setting. And to bring those things in painting, I am breathing, earth is moving, wind is blowing, and those things painters began to feel it. Painters were painting, they were working in their studios in Paris, and city was bombed, and they were not ready to live. They said, this is my place, I am painting, I have nothing to do with the war, but still studio was bombed, paintings were burned. Out of that destruction came new creation. The burned painting or destroyed painting had some history on top of that, and it spoke more than what the artist was trying to do in a nice painting. And for instance, broken mirror, you see your distorted imagery in that, and out of destruction, creation happens. That was happening in European countries, and Indian painters were responding, but painters like Asrekar or a realistic painter, they could not feel that or go more than that. They'll use Indian forms and distort it little bit and create something, but that wasn't the thing. You must use what you have and go beyond than that. And that beyond was happening. And some of the painters of that era really felt that through the reproductions and things. And new waves have always good response and understanding and acceptance in other countries than in India, you know. But Indian painters, to me, I think, they're rooted their culture, which is richer than any other culture in the world, I would say, proudly say, because certain things that we have discovered, others have not. For instance, singing key of female and male represents sun and moon. Similarly, few things that we have discovered, Indian sages have discovered, they have no idea. And with that profound background, our change was not for the sake of changing, but we had something profound into that. For Indian painters, those who responded to that new change of that era, their works in foreign countries and exhibitions, they stand out. They have their distinct identity because they are rooted into our culture. And painters of that era, they did not change for the sake of changing, but they were responding to the change through their culture. And it has, those works has distinctly Indian feelings and Indian performance.
Yes, very much so. I would like to draw your attention to the fact, because you have a multidisciplinary approach, which is a treasure for us, because you have worked at the highest level of eminence in painting, in music also as a tabla player, and also in films. And you have had also the benefit of interaction with some of the great sages like Rajneesh ji. My question to you, an observation actually, is because I had the good fortune of knowing Pandit Ravi Shankar in America during my stay there. I happened to live there for 15 years, the 80s and 90s. And I was in fact planning a film on him, which was called Bhairavi, which is the Rag Bhairavi. And in my interaction with Panditji in San Diego, I came across very intimately his whole life story, and how, because he was very much, as you know, his son Shubho was a painter also. So he was himself, he dabbled in painting also. His brother was a dancer. And it seems to me the 1950s is a very interesting period globally, because it was the coming together. UNESCO, if you remember, Subbu Lakshmi performed at the United Nations, and there were so many wonderful procession of Indian artists, musicians and dancers that were exposed to the attention of the West for the first time, starting with Uday Shankar, who worked with Anand Patole in dance. That began in the 30s actually, because Uday Shankar and his dance troupe were in Paris in the 30s. And so Ravi Shankar was hardly 16 or 17 at the time. He was himself trained as a dancer. He used to dance with Uday Shankar, his elder brother, in Paris in the 30s. And that was the period when Pablo Picasso was working with Diaghilev at the Kirov Ballet. And Pablo Picasso designed sets for the ballet. And Coco Chanel designed the costumes for them, and so forth. So this is the period in the 30s when art was multidisciplinary. And in that period, Indian artists like Uday Shankar and Jaimini Roy and a lot of other artists were discovered in Nandlal Bose, etc. Shanti Niketan, Rabindranath Tagore himself had exhibitions in Paris in the 40s and so forth. So this was the period, the rich period, the 30s onwards to the 50s, when Indian music, dance and painting also became familiar to Western audiences for the first time. In that context, as a musician, as a tabla player, because you said now